snake! Hey, brown snake!
Hey, this is Scott Kirkland from the Crystal Method. I'll be heading down to Auckland on February 29th and continuing on to Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Melbourne, and Perth. There's kickoff March, so hope to see you all out there.
Beautiful, mate. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. That's just over a week away. You're going to be heading over this way, mate. So are you the sort of person, have you packed yet and you're ready to go, or you leave it to the last minute?
I mentally started packing. Basically that's another situation. I'm still going through new material, old material, classic tracks, putting my set together. I've got a show here in the LA area on Saturday that I can get myself in line with some of the things that I want to be playing, and then the packing I will definitely start washing up everything, making sure I'm ready to go. But yeah, everything should be done by the weekend for sure.
Very cool. Now, you're only here last in December of 2022. So what will have changed with your show by the time you come back?
Definitely have added a bunch of new tracks, of revisiting some classic stuff that I didn't play the first time around, some new mixes. Yeah, it's I don't do the same set twice in a row. I like to change things up a bit, even from night to night. So I'm aware of what I was playing back then, and definitely want to, I want to mix it up a bit, and just bring the energy and bring the fun, and take care of the people who show up.
Now, that sure must have been pretty successful, mate, because like I say, it's just over 12 months later you're coming back, which is a great effort. So the fans over here obviously love you, eh?
Well, I was delighted to receive the offer to come back. Definitely had a good time when I was down there. It had been way too long. There had been obviously the delay from COVID. I think initially I was supposed to come out in June or July of 2020, and obviously things got shifted around. So I think there was a lot of anticipation for my return, and thankfully the shows came off pretty well, and the tour was great, and I'm really excited to be able to come back.
Yeah. So are Australian audiences different at all to other parts of the world, or do you find it's pretty universal wherever you go?
No, there's definitely something different. I think that there is a genuine appreciation that you get that sense from communicating to them directly, the way the crowd responds, just the vibe. I mean, it's a mutual appreciation. I love coming down there. I love the environment, love sightseeing. I love, getting a, opportunity to taste new foods, and definitely new beers. Beer culture is really taken off down there since the time we first started coming down there. So lots of microbreweries, I definitely get a sense that there is appreciation for the artist. Ever since going down there for Big Day Out, and obviously that was on a much grander scale, but you just get the vibe that there's limited artists that make the journey. It's not the easiest leg to put in your tour for many different reasons, but it is one that I've always appreciated, and definitely feel that same sense of community and appreciation from when I go down there.
So what do you do, bro, if you get a really tough crowd? Like, you're up there by yourself, so you got no one sort of feed off, no one to sort of bail you out. Like, bands drummer can do a solo or whatever, but you're by yourself, man. Like, how do you turn it around?
Well, the thing is, as selfish as it sounds, I don't play. I play music obviously for people, but I'm never going to play something that I don't thoroughly enjoy and love. So I'm not going to drop something that I think that would play to the crowd that I don't love. So usually I'm the one that's having the most fun on stage. I'm jumping around, and I get this adrenaline drop before I go on that propels me through the set, and I'm combustible and interactive, and and I have a great deal of fun. So that same energy is there if I'm playing for 100 people on a night that got snowed out. A couple of years ago I was doing a New Year's Eve show in Colorado, and earlier that day, like 9 inches of snow came down, and I was in I was in Boulder, which is about 30 minutes outside of Denver, but when there's snow, it just made it impossible for anybody to get out there. So what we were thinking was going to be a sold out night came in quite a bit less, just because people couldn't make it out there. But it was I always feel that it's no matter what, you can't worry about the people who aren't there. You only take care of the people who are there. So I'm going to have fun no matter what. So if everybody else wants to join along, then hold on to something. Let's move. Let's get going.
Sure. Now you're an electronic dance music artist that also appeals to the heavier market, mate. So can you explain how that works?
I think it's just that we grew up listening to rock, and I was a metal kid. So I think it's just this appreciation of big drums, distortion, riff like riff tracks, and so definitely that came out in what my partner and I did for the first 20 years, and the things that I've been doing over the last 5 years, 6 years since he retired. So I think that just it's ingrained in the DNA of the Crystal Method, rock and heavy music, big drums, distortion. So I think that as it sort of has allowed those with similar tastes to find their way over the Crystal Method. And one of the things that we've been told over the years is that we were sort of the gateway drug, if you will, for those that are coming from more of a rock or heavy background, and finding their way. Oh yeah, I found you guys, and then I was like, discover this band and this band, and now I'm a fan of it. So it's always something that I find that because there were those bands that did that for me, like Depeche Mode did that for me back in the day when I was all about Judas Priest and AC/DC and Metallica, and I listened to Black Celebration for the first time, and that that took me off into that journey. So it's just part of what we have always been about. That heavier sound is just part of the Crystal Method DNA.
I don't envy you at all, bro, because people that listen to heavy metal are probably the most stubborn, narrow-minded people you can get when it comes to music. So you're trying to create something with electronic dance music that's going to appeal to them. Like, hats off to you, bro. Like, you're doing well.
Well, it doesn't always work. I mean, we did, I remember years ago, we were doing there was this festival this traveling festival tour called Family Values. And It was Korn,
Limp Bizkit.
And we did a tour where Limp Bizkit was a headliner. Filter was one of the headliners. I think Stain did a couple shows. I also had Method Man and Redman on that tour. And we were, right in the middle of that lineup. And, there were definitely nights that when you'd go out and, you'd be playing to 8,000-10,000 people, and you'd be, have a couple people, flipping you off. And, but then by the end, the middle finger kind of came down a little bit. We sometimes got some horns.
Nice.
So, and then afterward, I've had, we had kids come up to us with, Corn, Limp Bizkit shirts on. And we're like, hey man, I've never heard you guys before, but that was pretty badass. It's little, you don't, it's not, we're not, we went up and did our thing. We didn't try to cater to, to any crowd. We just, our sound is our sound, and we feel that it plays well and with others. And we've played radio festivals and other music festivals, and with Green Day and Foo Fighters and Offspring and countless other more traditional rock bands, and found that we play our audiences cross pretty well.
Now, you're known as one of the pioneers of electronic dance music. So do you recall when you were first attracted to that style of music, and why?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like, in the mid 80s, bands like New Order and Depeche Mode, those bands had that electronic sound and used samples and used synthesizers. And although they were more traditional, singers, songwriter, vocals, it wasn't until in the late 80s that this sort of house scene started rising up out of Chicago, and then this the Detroit techno scene started followed, and then you had the UK bands, sort of UK artists, Orbital and the Chems and Prodigy, sort of building on that. So there were definitely, Left Field is another one. There's definitely those moments when, when Ken and I got into the studio and were inspired by all those things that came before us, that we found our way and found sort of, kind of come up with our own sound. And again, that sound, was led by, heavier, big drums and samples and different things like that. It's kind of the stuff that, hip hop bands like Public Enemy and Beastie Boys were doing at the time. So there were, it was definitely just a process. We just loved going to raves, and and we were punters in the crowd, listening to, various different versions of rave music at the time, and just got inspired. And then, what was to come was the sort of rise of at the time was called Electronica in the mid to late 90s, and then that took off from there, and ebb and flows of all the different variations that led us to where EDM, if you will, is kind of a cultural thing, and people enjoy it in practically every country on this planet. So it's it's been one of those gradual rises that we were there, in the early stages of. But of course, bands like Kraftwerk and Depeche Mode and Nights are Ebb and the various versions of industrial music and electronic music kind of all come together to create what's, I think, is a pretty vibrant scene that's pretty eclectic and full of great artists producing great music.
How would you actually describe what you do to someone like myself that hasn't really got a clue what it is that you do?
I'm a, kind of a producer. I work, I can pick up a guitar and I can play, chords and riffs. I'm not a trained guitarist. I'm not someone that reads music or could, play Stairway to Heaven or any, any of those traditional tracks. I can also pick up the bass and, noodle around on that. I have the same sort of skills when it comes to playing, piano and, noodling around on synthesizers and through air drumming, to, Metallica records. Growing up, I have a pretty good sense of timing. And so, all those things come together, and I'm, when Ken and I were working in studio, we would sample, we'd make noises, and then we would arrange the tracks, via using samples and MIDI and and build tracks out that had a more traditional form. Lots of stuff is pretty, nowadays is pretty cookie cutter. I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just sort of what a dance floor or a particular type of track requires: an intro, a drop, a build, another drop, and those sort of things that audiences and club goers are sort of traditionally understand as sort of modern EDM. But we always understood that you could make songs without a singer. We do have songs with singers, but it was just we're creatures of the studio. We come up with sounds and play around with plugged synthesizers into guitar pedals, and what comes out of that is somehow combined together to make what some people, not all people, but some people call music.
Very good answer, mate. I've got a lot better understanding of it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's all right, Scott. Well, thanks very much for your time, mate. The Crystal Method are over this side of the world, stopping in New Zealand on the 29th of February for a few shows, and you make it, or one show, and you make it over here to Australia on March the 1st in Sydney and go from there. So have yourself a good trip, mate.